Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm having a special talk show on, impact of COVID-19 on college students, which is extremely dear to my heart. And as we all know that it has impacted a huge deal within our college students. So I have a panel here of an awesome panelist, and thank you for joining today. So I'm gonna introduce.
Hello.
Thank you, guys. So the first person I'm going to introduce is Sahara Simpson.
Oh,
Hi,
hello.
Sahara. Hi. And her major is psychology and minor is criminology. And she's from Howard University. And thank you so much, Sahara, for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. The pleasure is mine. The second person I'm introducing is Ruben Perez, and his major is criminal justice.
Hello.
And hi. And minor is legal studies, and he's from Fairleigh Dickinson University. Thank you, Ruben.
Yes, I am.
And the third person I'm introducing is Amaya Perez. Her major is nursing, and she's from the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League college.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
You're very welcome. And the last person is Sarah Huck. Her major is biomedical engineering, and minor is Chinese. And she's from Rutgers University School of Engineering.
Hi.
So thank you guys for coming up, giving your busy time on this Saturday. And I would want to start with, because today is 4th of July and it's an Independence Day for us. I want to start that with acknowledging and giving just a moment of silence for the people who have given their lives, and specifically for COVID-19, as we have lost many lives. So just giving a moment of silence for them. Okay. So I want to start with all of you, and I'm just going to put it right there. With this unprecedented moments and with all the uncertainty going on, I know college is something which, once we are in a college and we start our college lives, it gives a security to us. But next 4 years, this is my plan, and that's how our society has trained us, our parents, our teachers, everyone. And it makes us practice that, next 3 years, 5 years, this is what's it gonna be. But with this situation, what's going on right now, how do you guys feel and what's going on? So please, whoever want to go ahead and start.
I can start.
Thank you.
So I was just gonna say it's kind of difficult, I guess, to like navigate the transition between having in-person classes to online classes, because like a lot of us were always, we become accustomed to the traditional style of entering a classroom, listening, taking notes, and then leaving with that collection of information that we obtained throughout the lecture. Whereas now when we're online, it's kind of more difficult because we're dealing with the obstacles of like issues online, whereas like Wi-Fi connections, or it's lagging, or it's slow. And then there's also the people around us that are like making noise or obstructing like our methods to learn and educate ourselves. So it becomes a little difficult when we're online learning as opposed to actually entering the classroom and looking the teacher face to face.
Yeah, I agree with Ruben. Like, for me specifically, the main difference was like my discipline. I feel like on campus, I'm in like a setting where I feel like, okay, I know I have to get this, and that done, so I'm going to do it. But being at home, it's a different dynamic, and there's a lot more distractions that take away from me deciding to get my work done, or me trying my best to get my work done. And like Ruben said, the connection errors, and some teachers are not the best at using technology. They're not tech savvy, so that very much disrupted the learning process as well. And it was just much different than being on campus.
Oh yeah, I can add to this a little bit. I definitely think that like as everybody talked about, the learning process is it's kind of a learning curve, and especially for I'm in my major is nursing, and I have more hands-on and clinical experiences. And these clinical experiences are hours put into my degree that is actually being taken away because I'm not able to physically be there in lab and like practice whatever techniques I have to do for nursing. And in addition, I'm learning anatomy, and it's kind of hard to visualize like body parts or something without having physical models because we have lab time and it'll be 2 hours dedicated to lab time. And during COVID-19, the class is kind of shortened to 45 minutes because there's only so much that you can just talk about the body without actually visualizing and trying to memorize and understand what's actually occurring. So I feel like especially for people in the STEM degrees or STEM programs, it's a very large learning curve coming into COVID-19 and transitioning to online learning.
You're absolutely right, Maya. I agree with you because, I'm a teacher myself, and my husband teaches in William Patterson University, and he teaches nursing. And to reiterate with Sahara's point, also, not every teacher is tech savvy. So it's a learning curve for them as well, for us as well. You know, absolutely, there's a generational gap. We're not as, I shouldn't say smart, but we're not as experts in when it comes to technology. So it's a learning curve, and we are much slower. Just it's the matter of the truth of the matter that we are slower, and we will be slower than your generation. Sarah, we didn't hear from you.
Well, I definitely agree with what everyone said. Like shifting to like online learning is not only hard for like the professors teaching, but also the students as well. Especially like if you're in like large classes. Like for example, in the spring, I was in a chemistry class which had like over 400 students, and it's hard for the professor to be able to take everyone's questions and things like that into account. And they're streaming the lecture live, and sometimes the camera doesn't work, and there's a lot of like technical issues that come into play, and it's harder. I feel like when you shift to online learning, all of a sudden, it's kind of like the responsibility is more so on the students to kind of go along and figure out like what to learn. Like it's on them to like fill the gap in between like the in-person to online shift, because like we got provided the syllabus and we have all the textbooks and the materials in front of us. So I felt like it was more so on the students to fill that gap. And even if you do try to go to like office hours online, there's tons of students on like that one virtual like office hour. So it's hard to even like get your question answered when you're on office hours. So like the shift was pretty difficult. Even with like I signed up for summer classes because I'm staying at home with COVID being in like everywhere. And even with that, like at home, it's like I like what Ruben mentioned, like there's so much like sound and things that happen at home that you kind of have to take into account. And with everything being closed, you can't just like go to a library or a coffee shop and just sit there and do work. You kind of have to like try to ignore the surrounding sounds, which is pretty difficult and something that like it's hard on students to concentrate and get our work done and learn material when we have all these distractions around us.
Okay, very well. So
Yeah,
let me
that's
ask
true.
you guys this. How is it being home? Is everybody's home, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody's home. And huge difference in college life and back home after once you leave home, then it becomes like then your home becomes a second home because college is the first home.
Mhm.
So how is it being back home?
Mhm.
I would say it requires a lot of adaptation. So, like
Mhm.
Sarah was saying, the shift from online to, or well, in person to online was very sudden. So,
Mhm.
when COVID was coming around and was coming more into fruition, I was actually on spring break. So I had about a week's worth of clothing with me, and I was at my house when they announced that we all had to social distance. So
Mhm.
for 2.5 months, I only had a week's worth of clothing with me. I had half of my textbooks. Meanwhile, the other half were locked in my dorm, and I didn't really have any of my things that I needed to end up doing online classes. I had to buy a whole entirely new laptop and charger, and it became increasingly difficult to able to navigate through the system. So I would say because of the sudden shift, it became like very difficult to kind of, get back into the college life and to finish the semester the way I wanted to.
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. Did they not allow you to go back and pick up your stuff, or it was just done deal that nobody's entering the dorm?
Mm. Yeah, we couldn't go back to campus. You had to request in order to do so with approval, and it was on very rare occasions. Like I wasn't even allowed to go back to get my textbooks or anything. That's how like secluded they wanted the campus to be. So it was very difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Ruben. Like the whole thing was so abrupt. Like the week that it happened, it was like 2 days before our spring break that they said, "Oh yeah, we can't come back to get our stuff if we leave." So I had to figure out a whole plan to move all of my stuff out and put it in storage, and then figure out how I was going to get from DC back home because even with everything going on, my family, they still were working, or they had like other responsibilities to adhere to, and they couldn't just stop what they were doing to come get me. So it was a long process. I ended up staying a few days into our spring break. I stayed in the dorm. They still allowed us to do that. And they said
Mm-hmm.
once we leave, we couldn't come back. So my brother was able to come and help me move all of my stuff out. And then I stayed with him in Delaware for a few days. But when classes started back up, I was back home, and it was like Ruben said, we had to adapt. And like my brothers would come and barge in my room when I'm in the middle of a Zoom call, and it's like it was so different from being in your classroom. You're focused. You can ask the questions if you have anything that's confusing or something. But having a Zoom call with over 100 to 200 people, you can't always do that. It'll be too chaotic, or if you type a question, it may get lost in the comments or something. It was so much different than being on campus. So much different.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I agree with Sahara and Ruben. I feel like the transition coming back home, especially for me, and like I lived in a more enclosed space, so I have less privacy. I feel like we all feel like that's the main thing with coming back home is the privacy, the siblings, or something along those lines, and trying to manage, not being distracted because when you're in a dorm, you have your own desk space, or you could go to the library, like Sarah previously mentioned, but coming into COVID-19, that's not a real option for you. And this whole transition coming back home really reminds me of the community that I'm in at my school for being, first generation or low income and having these students trying to transition going back home because I had friends who lived in California all the way across the country. And these plane tickets are ridiculously expensive. And especially it was very soon after the outbreak happened that they didn't allow students, they had the ban on air flight to across the country or out of the country and so on. So it was very hard for students, especially if they were low income, to get these tickets like right before, just because they had to get kicked out and
Correct.
try to move all their stuff. I know a lot of students, I think majority of the students who were out of state had to move their stuff into storage, or the school did it for them actually. And I was one of the lucky ones who was able to get my stuff and move back home because I only lived like 2 hours away. But for students who live in California or Texas or some sort, the school would put their stuff, came into their dorms, so you don't know who's touching your stuff, pack
Yeah.
their stuff and put it into storage, and then the students had to pay for that storage.
Just
And
imagine.
it's yes, so it's very hard financial burden on these students who live so far away and suddenly have to pay $600 for a ticket to go home, and then another like monthly payment for storage to keep their stuff because they weren't able to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like it's hard on like everyone, especially like the out of state students. Like I know that for Rutgers, they did say that like if you were like they listed like a couple of states, like if you're in these neighboring states and you had to leave, but if you were like farther away, like Amaya mentioned, like Texas or California, they did give like a special form where you fill out and like you had like permission to stay on campus in the time being. But it's kind of hard, like all of a sudden like you're trying to figure out what to do with like your life and things like that. Like you're in a space like college where it's supposed to be like safe, a learning environment, and all of a sudden some outbreak happens and you're kind of like trying to like book a next ticket home, but you're trying to to get like everything situated before because you don't know when you can come back and things like that. So it is kind of hard on like students. I felt like that as students, like we were pushed a lot into like adulthood really quickly, kind of like making decisions on our own and thinking like what to do next, and a couple like thinking like months in advance as for like the steps we would take now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sarah. It was like fast forward 4 years, but it's not on your call. And the circumstances are completely different, uncertain, and it's really scary. And I'm glad, Amaya, that you mentioned about the plane tickets. Thinking of many international students whose tickets are, nothing less than 3,000. It jumped to 5,000, and then again, the process of you're traveling from one place to the other place, then you're going to be quarantining for 15 days. So it's hard on every level, financially, psychologically, emotionally, mentally. I wanted to share with you guys, there was a study done, which I just got the results on June 3rd, and it from the Department of Psychology. And this is one of the students, MPhil student, who did the study. His name is James D. Alfin. And he did the study on the students in China. And there was three impacts that he was trying to capture. The first one was to evaluate the mental situation of college student living during pandemic. The second one was to provide a theoretical basis of psychological evaluation with college students. And the third one was to provide a basis phenomenon of, for national and governmental policy. And they chose like 7,143 students, mixed boys and girls. And they were trying to see that, what is the impact. So the result was 75% was no symptoms of anxiety. 21.3 were, displayed a mild anxiety. 2.7% was moderate anxiety, and only 0.9% displayed severe anxiety in relation to COVID. So this was China. So I was searching and looking, and sadly, in United States, there still have not been a single study done or student has been contacted to ask their feedback. Did you guys hear from your college or from anywhere? Especially because I know, Sahara, you're your major is psychology. Was there any kind of feedback or any concern from or any kind of survey?
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm muting for a second. Unfortunately, no, and that's kind of surprising now that I think about it. That they haven't done or thought about. Maybe there are people thinking about it, but no, I haven't heard about it. Any research ideas or topics so far? I actually was doing a research project with one of my professors before COVID happened, and it was on art therapy and how it can lower levels of anxiety. And as when COVID occurred, we still met over Zoom call every week, and we would bring up, oh, this would be a great project to get started now online, just to help with anxiety levels and stuff, especially going on with COVID. But project specifically to see the levels of anxiety or depression or anything rising or anything, no, I honestly haven't heard of it. But I also heard that when COVID happened, a lot of the suicide rates went up. The hotline phone, the phone call for the people with like mental illnesses or anything, those calls went up. Like all this stuff is happening, so it's really surprising that no one is trying to do something to get a better understanding of what's going on and then how we can like help those people. But I do know that those levels of like mental illness are rising in America due to the virus.
Yes, it is because I'm part of Montclair State, doing my fellowship in early childhood and with the Department of Autism, and our professor is part of working with the government and CDC department, and they're the one who have created the SAFI, which is a hotline, and it's free support for teachers, professionals, or anyone. and surprisingly, we are not getting much calls, so but we were suspecting the child abuse rate is going to increase to maybe 6%. That was just an assumption because my last class, my last virtual class was March 12th, and it's way more. I cannot share the data yet, but it's way more than 6%, because everybody's home. So child abuse is high, um, domestic violence is high, sexual abuse is high, also especially for the kids who are younger, and foster parenting. So because anxiety is all over with everyone. It is hard on most of the people, but my question to you guys is, what is the most scariest thing you have in your mind for your future as of now?
I guess I'll start with that one because I thought about it for some time. So for me, I think that like with everything going on, like including like politics and the spread of COVID and how like there's a second wave, like a speculation of second wave happening and things like that. And as of right now, we don't have a virus. So like right now, like my fear is like we don't have like an estimated point of when things will go back to normal. Like I'm afraid like that colleges would say like, okay, yeah, we're going to open for the fall, and like everyone moves in, and these are like international out of state students that of course are spending money again to move back in, and then like let's say a second wave hits that university area, and then we're all forced to evacuate again. So like it's not like a long term fear of mine, but like it kind of like it's like a domino effect. It like ripples onwards because we have no vaccine yet. We don't really know what to do. So as of now, like all we know to like protect ourselves is just to quarantine and stay home. So like when will things get back to normal is like my thing. Like I don't really know what the new norm is, like there's so many people that could be carrying it or so many people that are suffering from it and we don't even know. So I'm just hoping that like that we like progress in terms of like research and that there are like ways that we can or like methods that we can use to prevent ourselves from catching the virus or better methods of treating ourselves once we get it because like all we know right now are ventilators and some people do end up still dying from them, so that's my fear.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing. Yes, Ruben.
I definitely agree with Sarah. It's like everything is up in the air, whereas we don't really know what the long-term changes are going to happen to America and to countries around the world because like a lot of jobs are closing down, a lot of businesses, and the way we just go about like daily activities is going to alter as a result of the virus. So it's kind of both interesting and like nerve-wracking to like analyze and to view everything that's going to be changing. Like we can't even go to movie theaters anymore. Public pools are probably going to be non-existent. So like little things like that, but also factoring into the job market. Like I personally want to go about the legal route and become a lawyer. So how our courtroom's going to be, arranged? Are we going to be sitting 6 feet apart? Is there going to be a limited capacity of people that are allowed inside the courtroom? So these are questions that are all going to like in our minds throughout just daily activities and also within the professional workforce.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Ruben. And actually, with the court system right now, what's going on that they're not having any court dates. There's very few Zoom courts happening because those cases are either death penalty or strictly dated one, but everything else, including child abuse, neglect, or any if you have to get a restraining order, they just keep giving you 30 days, 90 days, 30 days, 90 days, which means you were stuck in that situation even more. So as Sahara was saying, that the suicide rate and all these things are on rise, which makes your subject even more in demand. Both of you, Ruben and
Yeah.
Sahara.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like it kind of prolongs the issue and it involves like a new policies that have to be implemented into the criminal justice system because I know early on with the virus they were whoever was in holding they were automatically released until trial. So that also like brings into question like the moral aspect of it, like what deems a person available to leave the jail cell and to be back into public space. is the public safety being compromised for the safety of the virus? So it brings in a lot of questions of morality, psychology, and things like that.
Exactly. Public safety and human safety and mental, what are we compromising? At this point, I think we are compromising everything. It's a matter of being alive or death, health-wise. So I'm going to come to Amaya.
Yes, I was really focusing, and while we were all talking about this, on the issue of mental health that we've been talking about, suicide rates and abuse and something like that. Along those lines, we have a group chat within our school for people in lower income or something along those lines. And I know a lot of these students had problems going back home. And I feel like that was maybe a fear for them because, like Sarah mentioned, for Rutgers, we also had the opportunity to stay within the dorms and not go back home. And people shared their experiences of like maybe being abused by their parents or something along those lines, and these very extreme situations in which they did not want to go back home. And then by the time May came around, the school just had to kick them out because they couldn't stay. And I know some people, usually, if they have this like extreme situation, they may try to find apartments or something like that. But it's hard to find any local living when you're not able to visit or get any listings or something along those lines. And speaking upon the topic of international students, there was some worries about international students from countries that are in the midst of war, famine, something along those lines. I know a lot of students were concerned that if they went back home, that they, because of the control from the government or something along those lines, that they wouldn't be able to have Wi-Fi, they wouldn't have proper food or anything along those lines. And some of those students actually got rejected from staying in the university for the rest of the semester, and they were forced to go back home. And I know it was very heartbreaking for them, and this is such a big fear returning back home. And this is this is their opportunity. You have international students coming from these so-called third world countries or whatever you may call it, and they're trying to get this opportunity for education. And you have this pandemic coming around, and then the schools are forcing them to go back home, and especially with the tuition is still remaining as high as it is. I feel like these are all really big fears for college students, maybe going back home, their mental health. And mental health in colleges anyway, it's always been a big problem. Like student health services, everybody always acknowledges it's lacking, but it's still there for them. And it's always in my school, it's a free service. And then going back home, they're not going to be able to have that as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. I 110% agree with you, Amaya. In many cases, actually, once you start living in college life, because when I went through with college life, I thought that was one of the best time of my life, and I can relate and link. You're among your peers, and it's such a healthy environment created. Not that I'm saying that your homes are not, nicer place, but once you are among your peers and you get that kind of psychological emotional support, you get used to it. And that is the reason the college life is made in that way, because you're in that important part of your life and you can flourish more. So I do think college life is a blessing, but with this situation we are compromising on a very, very high level. And I really do feel for this generation, it's going to be impacting all of us on a very huge level. I wanted to share here that the previous research that I was talking to you about, the biggest impact that they were having was the students themselves, although that was not a question that they asked them, but they said for them it was about their future and they're about their finances, that and then there's no jobs, who's going to hire them because the situation is such. And in your case, as you said, that there are students whose stuff has been put in the storage rooms. Where are they going to pay from? There are situations which are students are pushed into it. And coming back to the international students, the whole effects of application and admissions is going to change, and it's already changing. The new students who were excited to be accepted a couple of months ago, they will be going through their own anxiety and thinking that maybe we should have a gap year. What do you guys think of that? Maybe, or your advice to that new class coming, And I know many of the colleges are keep saying, we don't know yet. We will inform you in the end of May, then in the end of June, then in the end of July. Again, I understand colleges are businesses as well. They don't want
Mm.
to lose the students. So, what is your advice to any new coming class? Is it worth it? Even if colleges tuitions are really high,
Yeah.
what should you guys give an advice to your younger ones?
I've been seeing a lot of suggestions that new students should do community college for this year, just because um, like you said, the institutions are not sure if they're even going to be open, and their tuition is most of the tuition are going up because they need the money after this downfall for COVID. So it's better to like do the community college, and you can save that money up until things get back to normal or the new norm, and then you have a better understanding of what to expect going into college. Like I know for me, my going into Howard, the culture was a big thing. So homecoming and Yard Fest and Spring Fest, all those things are things that people look forward to. And even for every college, there's always that one thing or something that you're looking forward to about your university. And because everything that's going on, it's most likely not going to happen. Like homecoming this year is canceled after I don't know how many years it's never been canceled, but homecoming is canceled this year. And that's something that a lot of people look forward to. So I would say if you can and are willing to do community college for your first year, and you can save up that money, and then you get a better understanding of what the university you're interested in is going to do in the near future, and then you can switch over and just transfer those credits.
Thank you. That's a very good advice. And it saves money, and that's a very good advice.
Mhm.
I would like to add something. So I just wanted to add that like the college, I guess, application process, it can be daunting. And now with everything going around, nothing's very solidified. A lot of people are asking questions and there's not a lot of answers to be given to those questions. So everything is kind of just up in thin air and we're kind of just navigating the system as we go along. So I guess my advice for like younger students is to just try to collect as much information as you can about the various things like the cost to go to college, how would you get there transportation wise, are you going to be in personal classrooms or is it still going to be online classrooms, because then you can kind of navigate if you want to be on campus or not. So I would guess just, I don't know, go talk to mentors or professionals, professors in the institution and try to provide like ask some questions and see how everything's going to be navigated from now on as opposed to how it was before prior to the coronavirus.
That's true. Go ahead, Sarah, Maya. You guys go ahead and take.
I definitely agree with what Ruben and Sahara said.
Susie,
Sorry, I think I was lagging.
no, go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying that I definitely agree with what Ruben and Sahara was saying, that definitely look at like everything like from a big pictures point of view. Don't just look at it like, okay, this I got in accepted to like my dream school, but like how am I going to pay for it? And is your dream school worth going to if it's going to be online? Like you can always like Sahara said, go to a community college or go to like another school, and then like that'll be like cost effective for you to save up money so that you could go back to your like dream school that you want to go to when it's back in person learning. Like definitely like look at everything from like a big pictures point of view, but like of course if you got like a full ride to like this one school that like you got into, like go ahead and take it, like nobody's stopping you. Like that's you're saving your money and you're going where you want to go, you know. Like so look at everything from like a grand scheme, like, and that could be hard as like a senior in high school or like a junior in high school trying to like figure everything out. But definitely look at options are good, not bad.
Okay, so I hear all of you guys, about future plans, but as I was looking at the report of college, financial impacts, colleges are making their own changes, to moving from in person to online class, and I think that's a very very high price on parents and on students as well. where they were supposed to be, having class, face to face, and now it's going back to um, online, and they're not getting much reimbursement on that. Uh, so, what do you guys think that if you guys are going to be reopening, and how much worth of it is of your tuition?
I can start with this one. I feel like the overarching topic of going back to school and stuff like that is kind of like weighing your options. My university recently just came out with a notification informing us of what their decision is for the next fall semester, and they have decided on a hybrid approach to learning, and so that students are able to go back to their dorms and large lecture classes. So if it's over 25 students, then they will be online. So you just stay in your dorm and then it'll be on your computer or laptop. And if it's a smaller class, it's a size of like 25 or less, they will put those classes into like large lecture halls. So you have space and then you can conduct the class that way, still in person, but with more space. And especially for me in nursing, I have clinical hours that I have to attend, maybe because yeah, starting my spring semester of sophomore year, I'd have to start my clinical rotations in the hospital. And this is something essential for the nursing degree and nursing license, getting your license for nursing. So you need to have these certain amount of hours put in for experience. So I feel like it really depends your major and for how much you're going to be interacting with your classes and stuff. But for the most part, I think colleges are choosing to do online learning or a mix of the two if there's a smaller class portion. I know that for my university, they've lowered the prices for dorming,
Okay.
which is a great option. My housing was up near 14,000. It's a very large price, and then with they gave us quotas for each semester. So about the fall semester is going to be about 5,000 ish, and the spring semester even a little less than that, 4,000. I feel like there's still so much up in the air despite the information that they've given us. But I feel like if like my university has told me about the hybrid learning, this is a kind of options you have to think about when you're, weighing whether I really, you want to go back to college, especially for freshmen who go into college looking for the experience. I feel like that's everything your parents tell you. Oh, I want go to college, experience it, get to know new people, meet your professors. But that's kind of hard to do, even with the hybrid learning. That oh yeah, I'm gonna meet my professor, but I'm gonna be like 6 feet away, barely talk, and something along those lines.
And you also have to know like if you can handle or discipline yourself enough to do online courses, because you may not even like online is so much different than in person, because in person I feel like you have a sense of like obligation just because you're in that presence with that professor, whereas online, like I'm not gonna lie, like there was some math classes that I couldn't wake up to when it was online, but when I was on campus I was able to get up and go have breakfast and then go to class. But like online, it's like you have to have really good discipline in order to wake up for those classes, get your work done and submit it when it's due and all that stuff. And another thing, like Amaya was mentioning earlier, the people that live across the country or or outside of the country, the time zones, like for Howard specifically, we're on the East Coast. So certain people who lived in like Hawaii had to wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning for an 8 a.m. class Eastern time. So those things can also come into account for people who may want to stay home but do online courses. Where are you doing those online courses with? Because they're going to align with that specific time zone. So it's a lot, like Amaya said, a lot to absorb and take in all the information from wherever you're trying to go or get your education from.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You brought the point that which I was going to ask, the next, that the impact of different timings, and at the same time, the rules and regulations and criterias for online would be changing as well. It's going to get more difficult and critical. They're changing the, all the format, because we also are getting trained, which is another thing to be trained on. And if there's by certain timeline, if nobody has submitted stuff, uh, the rate of students passing is going to be much less. And that's increasing another anxiety and another problem between the students. And so in terms of international students, visa is another problem which is happening because United States embassy has been closed and it's not opening. So all these students who are coming from internationally from abroad, and even if they had their visa, they would not be able to come in. And even if they are gonna, they're paying their foreign the you get most money from foreign students. So if you're paying something, say for instance, 10,000, the foreign students are paying 40 or 60,000 for that. That's just a rough example for them. And even if they're going to go cheaper, it's not going to be as much cheaper online. And then the timing, depending where you are, some places you are plus 12, some places you are plus 8 hours. And, internet is not there. The timing is not the same. So it's a lot of challenges and a lot of difficult things coming on for international students as well. It's not easy in any way coming. So my next question is actually going to be depending on your majors. I know, Amaya, you said that because you were in nursing, and in nursing you do need, firsthand experience. You did speak about it. Coming to Sahara, your major is psychology, and I know that you're doing minor with criminology, which is, I think it's such a good combination. Um, and with the future coming along, things would be more in need. Um, where do you see yourself in next 4 years?
Well, in 4 years, I'm hoping to actually study abroad right after I graduate from undergrad, with the plan of I'm planning to join the Peace Corps actually to start a program in another country where I would be practicing what I've learned in undergrad, as far as like starting a program to help with psychology, specifically stress related. So I actually have an idea for a stress related program to help different people in other countries, developing countries that may not have those resources for to help them with anxiety, stress in general. So my plan is to help people with their stress levels in other countries. I'm not sure exactly what specifically I want to do with that, but in that realm.
Okay. Well, with the situations going on, you will get enough time to see how things are turning, and in which direction. So, Ruben, I know that because you already shared about criminal justice and legal studies. Where do you see yourself?
Well, I'm hoping that in 4 years from now that I would be approaching my law school. I do eventually want to go to law school. If not, then there's a lot of research projects that I know I have to do prior to entering a graduate degree program. So that would be probably a focal point that I would take into consideration, because a lot of colleges and like graduate degree programs, they require you to take some time to yourself and do a research project that kind of brings back some type of impact to the community. So I would have to think about how not only what I can contribute to my community, but as a result of the coronavirus, like how things going to change. How am I going to be able to like navigate through certain things and, kind of make a difference within the resources that I have currently. So it's kind of up in thin air at this point, but I know it's either going to be within the research project or it's going to be my graduate degree program.
Oh, okay. Okay. Amaya, you already went, but again, in 4 years, we don't know what's going to happen. So please share. And then we will be taking we have some comments. A lot of people are watching.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like I see myself in 4 years, hopefully with my degree all finished and having passed the NCLEX, which is the test for the certification for nurses for it to become an RN. And specifically, I've been saying this for a while that I want to focus on going abroad as well, but on a more woman empowerment focus, because I feel like there's a lot of, especially in the medical field, that there's a high percentage of males instead of female to that ratio. And I would like to go into different countries where their cultures may not be as accepting for women in power or women empowerment, and going into these countries and maybe helping them out, information, spreading that info that, women can do something. So this is something I'm really passionate about, volunteerism, and probably going abroad and doing that.
Absolutely. But about women ratio, actually in nursing, women are we there's very few men. I think my husband was the first male in his community. So yeah, we have more of a women in that, but I love the idea of
Mhm.
women empowerment. Sarah, I know that your minor is Chinese, and just curious how engineering and Chinese, they're very different.
Yeah, they are very different. Actually, so the reason I made my minor Chinese is because it fulfills the elective requirements that I need for engineering, and I got placed into the intermediate class. So then I thought that since it fulfills the elective requirements, I can just make it my minor. And also, I really like learning the language. I learned it throughout high school, and I like even went to China. I love the culture and things like that. I like learning new things and new languages. So I just figured that it killed two birds with one stone. So.
I would like to add on that a lot of people don't really know, but like if you diversify your major, your minor, a lot of colleges like that. They think of it as okay, you're not just focused on one study. You're very versatile and open to different aspects of education. So I think that that's the perfect thing to match, like biomedical engineering, and then something that's more in tune with like things that you're more passionate about, and it's like a cultural aspect to it as well. So it kind of not only fulfills the requirements academically, but kind of to give you a well-rounded experience in life.
Oh,
I
thank you
agree
for
with
opening that up.
that.
Actually, this is something to help the next students, because
Mhm.
mostly people are in one track, that whatever goes match with that. And what I was looking at it in a different way, you just opened my eyes. And the other thing is that all four of you have studied Chinese. You guys are fellows for a couple of years together. You guys did study the language for a long time. So if you guys want to give a message in Chinese, what would that be in one or two sentences?
Jayo, jayo.
Jayo, jayo. That means
That
fight
means like keep going, persevere.
I know that. I heard that a lot. Jaya Jaya.
Jayo, jayo.
Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and take some comments here. A lot of people are watching and giving thumbs up. Shoaib Aziz is watching from Saudi Arabia, and Hilal Chaudhry is watching. Corinne Leva, she's a community engagement specialist from 4C. She's watching. Um, Nashwan, he's from Bangladesh. He's watching. He was supposed to be on our show, but our timing did not match, so he couldn't join us. Amir Hamza is watching. Ali is watching. Faraz Umar, Faiza is watching from Saudi Arabia. So we have a question here from Amir Hamza. Are teachers helpful, or they are being inconsiderate that online education is hard for students?
Mhm.
So if we
I
can
can
have
speak
that,
on behalf of
go ahead.
yeah, I can speak on behalf of my professors and faculty. I think they're being very helpful and considerate for everything because, like I said, the change and the shift between in-person classes to online classes was very abrupt. So they didn't really have all the information to know to kind of give us and provide us with like a certain like sense of security. So a lot of times like there would be in situations where I would hand in an assignment late and I would apologize for it, but they would reassure me that it's because of the situation. It's kind of hard to, be as punctual in this traditional sense of being a student in a classroom. So it becomes difficult. Whereas I mentioned earlier, where I had a lot of my textbooks stuck in my dorm, so I didn't really have my books to like rely on information and to go on my notes and to do tests and things like that. So it became increasingly difficult. And I would just, message my professors, tell them my concerns, explain my situation, and they pretty much helped me for the most part.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I agree with Ruben. My professors were very helpful and very understanding. Um, I'm sorry if you hear my dog, but my a lot of my professors, they either if you were doing really well in the class, there was towards the end of the semester they said you didn't have to do certain exams or you didn't have to turn in certain assignments, which was really helpful to me because I did really well my first half of the semester. So two of my classes I actually didn't have to do the final exam for 2 of my classes, and in one class I didn't have to turn in an essay for because I was already doing so well. And even for people who may have been struggling, they gave them extra credit, or they curved a lot of the grades because they understood the time that was going on, and they also are going through things with us. So it's like they understood, okay, if I can't grade all of these, how can I expect them to be able to do all of these things? So I can say I was lucky enough to have professors this semester that were really helpful and really understanding throughout the whole situation.
Yeah. I can speak on my behalf as a teacher. We were asked to be, lenient, but for September, we have been asked to not be so lenient.
Mm.
So the next question is, another question is, what are university doing to make sure students are safe at campus if in-person classes starts, and how transparent the process is? That should be our last question because we're coming very close to our ending time. And who I want to take it? Sarah, Amaya.
Okay, I'll take the question. So like I'll speak on behalf of like Rutgers. Like we haven't like announced like what they're going to do for the fall semester yet. They're still like waiting on like a concrete decision as to what to go moving forward. I know for like the graduate school, they said it's going to be hybrid with the people that need like clinicals and labs and like research to be done in person. But as for undergrad, they haven't announced anything. But I've seen like from like surrounding schools and other things like that, that a lot of them are planning to go hybrid or go online. And in terms of like the hybrid plan, I think it's kind of complicated when you think about it, because you don't know what track people are on. Some people can be on a pre-law track, some people can be on a pre-med track, or people can just be taking their like major. And you don't know if like their classes are like big size classes, small size classes. So at the end of the day, like if it's hybrid, there's majority of students are going to be like in their dorm buildings together, right? So you can't really practice social distancing if you're in a dorm building with like a bunch of people sharing a shared space of a bathroom or a common lounge and things like that. So definitely like the hybrid option, I think that it's kind of like, even though like they're practicing in terms of classroom space of practicing social distancing, it's hard to like implement that in the dorm unless like they don't offer housing to like half the students, which like then it comes into play like who gets housing and who doesn't get housing. So I feel like that some universities still need to come out with like a concrete plan as to like what are they going to do like when the fall comes and people need to move in and things like that. So
yeah. Well, thank you for your impact. The thing is, we are going through such a uncertain time, and it's so hard to be in an uncertain time for such a long time, which actually creates more uncertainty and anxiety and everything in every age and everything. So, can you guys hear me?
no, it's a little laggy.
Okay. So, oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna try to speak more slower because I know we come very close to our show. I really want to thank every one of you, Ruben, Zahara, Sarah, and Amaya. I know with this uncertain time that we are going to, physical distance for, from the classmates. And the other thing is that the biggest stressor for college students in relation to, delaying studies and future employment opportunities. I'm sorry, I see that none of you guys can hear me. So I will just take final messages from you guys. Go ahead, because
Yes. I would like to add. I would just say this is just a prime example of the difficulties that technology kind of provide us with the online situation that's happening. So I would just say we can use this as like a learning moment where you can see my background. I'm in a garage. Like I don't really have the best environment around me, so for me to continue my education. But that doesn't excuse the fact that we all have to be disciplined and persevere through this time. So I guess my advice to everyone is just to be patient and to have, to keep on going. Jayo, jayo, like push harder, and you can do it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with Ruben
Thank you,
about the
Ruben.
learning experience and everything. And yeah, this was really a good platform. It's good to that we can get a different perspective from each of us with each of our different universities. We had different responses. We each have different situations, and it's even good for myself to get to hear everyone's different perspective. And like I can understand, okay, maybe this was harder for someone else than it was for me. And I guess it's really good for people going into college after us to get a good understanding of what they're getting into and tips and things that they can get to make a better decision for their future. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
You're
thank you
very
so
welcome.
much. Hmm. Yeah, I was gonna add on to Sahir, like, thank you so much for giving us this platform for us to, actually voice our opinions. Because as you mentioned before, universities and the whole country hasn't actually been asking us, like, how are you feeling? Or how are you experiencing this? Like, this is such a big shift for all of us, and it may be taking a toll on people's mental health and stuff like that. So if I were to have like a last message, especially for those going into college, it's just take a breath, and we're all going through it with you. You're not alone, definitely. And I feel like you may feel rushed, that you have to grow up faster, you have to discipline yourself. And I've had the experience of coming into college and finding my own pace and trying to do that. And for you, it's kind of rushed, that you're rushing to the finish line, you barely have your feet on the ground. It may seem negative, but it's okay. Like, we're all going through it with you. And I feel like with COVID, trying to think of the bright side, is that there has been a better focus on mental health and more opportunities for you to get help. Like you mentioned before, that you guys had a hotline that you guys were starting. So I think this is a very good opportunity to start focusing on very important matters.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everyone. Like it was a good chance to like talk to everyone, see how our different universities are planning through things. And like Amaya said, like even this small conversation was able to like whatever stress we had bottled up inside of us, like with our upcoming fall semester approaching, like we were able to share and talk to each other about it. So definitely a way to like relieve like your like stress and like kind of focus on like self-healing and things like that. So thank you. I appreciated it and like enjoyed it and speaking with everyone. So.
Well, you guys are very, very welcome. And as I said, that you guys are our future. I'm very proud of each and every one of you. I see all four future leaders amazingly, flourishing. And specifically, the COVID in this situation, as you said, Maya, all of you in your own different ways, it has taught us how to be better in many different ways, how to cope. So I really appreciate that. And this is your platform. You guys can come again anytime, and thank you for joining, and happy birthday, Maya, because I know today's your birthday as well.
Happy
Thank
birthday,
you.
Happy
Maya.
Thank
birthday!
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Channel 52, for providing us with this opportunity and letting me have, our youth come on and share your messages. Because as I said, that the study was just done in China, but not in the United States. But, that's really dear to me. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and happy 4th of July.